Welcome to the Bronx African American History Project. My name is Stephen Payne, and I'm the librarian and archivist at the Bronx County Historical Society. And I'm here on the phone with Mr. Thomas Warner of Philadelphia, who spent a good chunk of his adolescence in the Bronx and has certainly led a very rich life on his own. And he also happens to be the son of Audley Moore, better known as Queen Mother Moore, who was a force of nature in 20th century African American freedom movements. So we begin these oral history interviews by asking, Tom, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family and how they ended up in the Bronx? That's a big question, right?
Well, my mother and sisters were born in New Iberia. That's in Louisiana.
Sure.
And they migrated up, I don't remember what year it was, but it was just before 1930. And most of us, we lived in Harlem. We all started out in Harlem, as I remember.
Definitely.
And after that, all of us moved to the Bronx. We didn't live in the same apartment or the same buildings. We lived on different streets.
Sure.
But let's see, I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah. Do you remember if there was anything in particular that inspired you all to move up to the Bronx, or it was just a thing that a lot of people were doing at the time?
A lot of people were moving out of Harlem.
Yeah.
And when we moved to the Bronx, we moved up to the Coops because we were visiting up there. And hello?
Oh, yes, I'm still on. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm all right. And we were visiting up there with some friends in the building that we moved to. So I was so awed about it. I had a wonderful time there, and I questioned my mother about, what the chances were could we move up there. And so it took about maybe 4 or 5 months before an apartment was ready for us, but we moved up to the Bronx in the Coops, the cooperative houses. And that's where we lived for, until the late 70s. No, the late 60s, I'd say.
Sure. And for anyone who listens to this interview and is unfamiliar with where the Coops are, they're just off Bronx Park East, 2700. So go ahead, Tom.
Oh, yeah. You take the train to Allerton Avenue, and that's when we got off, and then we walked a few blocks to the Coops. And it was very, very nice. Very, very nice.
Do you happen to remember which friends, just out of curiosity, you all were visiting the first time you went up there?
The friends that I had, you said?
Yeah, the friends you had before you all moved in that you all were visiting. Do you remember their names?
The friends I had before I moved to the Bronx?
Well, so you all were visiting some friends up in the Coops before you moved in. That's the first time you saw the buildings. Do you remember who you all were visiting?
Oh, I don't remember.
Sure. Sure.
But we were visiting, and a lot of the friends that let's say the boys and girls that I knew, I had met at Camp Woshika.
Sure.
And so when I saw them, and I was so amazed that so many of them that lived up there.
Yeah.
So I begged my mother, to move up there, and we did.
And from what you told me before, you all lived on the top floor of the top floor of. Do you remember the section
Well, it's the first section, and we lived. The address was 2737 Barker Avenue.
Okay, great, great. Um, and moving away from the Coops for just a little bit, were you in elementary school still when you all moved up there?
Yes.
Do you remember which elementary school you attended in the Bronx?
No.
Yeah, yeah. P.S. something. Who knows? Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember the names of any of my elementary schools either, and I'm only 33, so. But yeah, not too memorable. What about the junior high? Do you remember the junior high you attended?
No, I can only remember high school.
Okay, yeah. So let's go to the high school then. Which high school did you attend? You told me before, but just
Oh my gosh.
I think you said, was it a Childs?
That's it.
That's the one.
Child
Yeah, I remember you told me that before. And were there were there other African American students at a Childs at the time, or were you one of the?
Yeah.
Okay, there are a lot because it's in the Wakefield, Edenwald kind of students that would live in that neighborhood. I'm guessing as well. And were there other Koopniks who went there as well, or were you one of the few people who lived in the Coops who went there?
Oh no, other people had gone to Child High School.
Sure.
I wasn't the only one.
Okay. And were there any parts of the Bronx that you knew to avoid as an African American teenager, or did you pretty much go wherever?
More or less, I was free to go wherever I wanted to.
Sure. I think it's from a slightly later period. There's some interviewees who went to a Childs, didn't live at the Coops, but they remember being chased home by some Italian kids kind of in the immediate neighborhood, Williamsbridge neighborhood. So I'm glad that didn't happen to you. There's one.
No, never happened.
That's good. One guy lived, probably about where your aunts lived, in that part of the Bronx, and for whatever reason he went to a Childs, and he would occasionally have to run home, which I think that's probably a good 3 miles or so. But yeah. But he would have been at a Childs probably in the 50s or maybe even 60s. So quite a bit after, little bit after you.
One moment, please. My
Sure.
wife wanted to talk to me about it. What do you want? I'm sorry. My wife wanted me to talk about Paul Robeson and his son.
Yes.
I met Paul Robeson's son, Paul. We call him Paulie Jr. Paul, we met him while we were living in Harlem.
Sure.
He didn't live up in the Coops.
Sure. They would visit pretty regularly, though, I think. Is that right?
I beg your pardon?
Would they visit on a somewhat regular basis? Would they visit the Coops?
No.
Okay. Again, I guess it's probably after you, but so Tyke Taylor's cousin, who would have been probably 15 years younger than you, Charlotte Dickerson is her name. And she remembers being carried around on Paul Robeson's shoulders because Paul was pretty good friends with her mother, Angie Dickerson.
Angie.
Yeah. But I think that would have been more like in the 50s and 60s when she remembers Paul coming to visit. So he didn't really come around the Coops when you were there.
No.
Okay. I see.
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge, yeah. And actually, I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you about Paul. So I'll just go ahead and go to that question. Were there other kinds of prominent African American radicals that visited the Coops? Whether just in general, or your mother in particular?
I can't recall it right now.
Okay, I see.
I can't recall.
Yeah. Again, speaking with Angie's youngest daughter, Charlotte, she remembers Dr. Du Bois coming up there once or twice. William
Yes,
and
yes, I think he lived there.
okay. I knew his. I think it's.
The dentist, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think.
Um, and William and Lou, his wife Patterson, would come up, I think, in the 50s or 60s, but might be too early for them to come up there when you were there. But okay, so what about growing up in the Coops? Was your mother in the National Maritime Union at the time? Was she traveling a lot, or she wasn't? She was in the Bronx a lot at the time.
Oh, yes. She, as I recall, yes, my mother was in the Maritime Union, and she had was shipping a lot of war brides back to the United States.
I remember reading that somewhere. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She did that at least 2 trips. She
Wow.
had made, and she had and she was telling me about the war brides of the American soldiers that they married in France or Germany, and she sailed to England at one time and France, and brought back these brides of the American soldiers.
Wow. So she'd be gone for that would take a while to get over there and do everything she had to do, which I'm sure it was a whole lot of work to do that and bring them back. So she'd be gone for a few months at a time, I guess. Is that right?
Yes, true. Yes.
And so during those times, would you go to other apartments in the Coops, or were you old enough where you could kind of look out for yourself?
Oh, a lot of times I was old enough to look out for myself.
Sure. And one of my favorite questions that we always ask in these interviews is, do you remember much the kinds of foods that either your mom or other people would cook when you were growing up? I love food, so that's one of my favorite questions.
The average foods, so about the same. Meat, potatoes.
Whatever you could find.
Oh gosh, variety of. Yeah,
Anything that your mother cooked that was your favorite, or anything along those lines, or it was all pretty good?
Gumbo, I'd love.
Oh my God, I love gumbo. You know, I'm originally from Orange, Texas, right over the border, a mile from Louisiana, and yeah, Cajun food has a special place in my heart. But there's parts of that area that I'm very glad to have escaped, of course, too. But aspects.
What I didn't like about okra was the okra.
Oh yeah, the
Okra.
sliminess of it, huh?
Yeah.
Yep. Would she ever make? This is just me going down Cajun food routes. Would she ever make etouffee or anything like that?
Not that I know of.
Oh, okay.
If we did have it, but if she did cook it, I didn't know the name of it.
Yeah. And what about music? Was music a big part of your household growing up?
Oh, I loved it. I love music.
Yeah?
I played the trumpet.
Yeah.
I played, we had the IWO band.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And we had a bugle and drum corps.
Oh, wow.
On Labor Day, we would march on Labor Day down on Broadway, and had a nice time. And I wanted to play like Harry James. Oh my God! I wanted to play the trumpet like Harry James.
So would you say you're pretty good at the trumpet?
At that time.
At that time, yeah. You got to keep up with it, or your lips can't cut it
right.
anymore.
Yeah.
What aside from kind of the music you'd play in the fife and drum corps, were there other genres of music that you would play or you'd listen to?
Jazz.
Sure.
Yeah, jazz and swing, and I listened to a lot of Count Basie.
Ah, yeah. Yeah.
Charlie Parker.
Sure.
Oh, wow.
Were there did you go to any of the jazz clubs in the Bronx ever, or that you were a little too young to venture to those places at the time?
Yeah, I didn't go to any clubs. I also would visit Harlem.
Sure.
Go to the Harlem Opera House.
Ah, yeah.
Stars there.
Oh, wow.
And at least every once a week.
Sure. Yeah, and it's an easy enough ride. You just hop on the tube and
train. Yeah.
Yeah, go down. But yeah, it's crazy. There used to be probably about 200 little small jazz clubs in the Bronx. None of them are around anymore, but between
What
the...
do you mean, in the Coops?
Well, no, I don't think there were any near the Coops. It was more in the southern part of the Bronx where there were so many jazz clubs. But did the Coops have a club that was devoted to listening to jazz or playing jazz or anything like that?
No.
Oh, okay.
I have to say this about the clubs at the Coops. There were at least I can remember at least 3 clubs that was mostly for the Jewish people.
Sure.
And we had a meeting one night, and I spoke up and asked for a club for my people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we did get a club. It was called Carmen Jones.
Carmen Jones.
Carmen Jones. After the movie.
Sure.
And so it was a struggle to get one. And I said, I think that we deserve one.
Yeah.
All these years, we didn't have a place of our own.
Absolutely.
Oh, just one time.
Yeah.
So we finally got one.
And was it a social kind of club? Is that what it mostly was?
Social. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Social.
Yeah. And was...
Everybody could go there.
Sure.
Just for the African Americans.
Sure.
Everybody could go there.
But it was a club you could call your own, which you didn't have. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And was it mostly for teenagers, young adults, or there older people that would come too? Okay, teenagers. Yeah. Did the parents, the African American parents in the building, were they able to get a club of their own or anything?
No, not that I know.
Okay, I see. I'm sure they had plenty of other things to do. They probably didn't necessarily have time, but okay. So what about let's see, what else now? Oh, okay. So this is building off what you were just talking about, actually, but what was it like being one of only a dozen or so African American families in the predominantly Eastern European white Jewish community?
Well, you couldn't help notice that we were kind of separate.
Sure.
Because they had shul, special schools for the Jewish people.
Yeah.
To learn their culture and learn their language, and we didn't have anything like that.
Sure.
So we were almost a little segregated ourselves.
Yeah.
We were segregated.
And was it mostly just segregation, or do you remember any incidents of outright racism that you?
Oh, no.
Okay,
There's
I
no
see.
racism there, no.
I see. It's just people kind of doing their own thing, but
Yes.
that can be alienating in its own regard, of course, too. But no kind of explicit incidents of racism that you
Well,
remember.
we didn't. Well, we didn't go around with white girls.
Sure.
We just didn't happen. The families wouldn't allow it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jewish families would not allow it.
Yeah.
Let me say they frowned on it.
I see. And what
We could play together.
Sure.
Let me see. In the playground, we could do anything we wanted to, just as long as we were playing. But after that, no.
I see. And what about the African American parents in the building? Would they be very close, typically, with the Jewish parents in the building, or kind of brought kids together and then otherwise didn't associate?
Very few.
Yeah. And you mentioned a few names of some of your friends in the Coops when we spoke last. Do you remember the names of some of your closest friends in the Coops?
Oh, I'll call Tyke Taylor.
Sure.
And Chuck Turner.
Chuck Turner, yeah.
Al Percy.
Al Percy. How do you spell Percy? Just so I can get it right whenever I.
Percy.
Percy. Okay, great. Yeah, I've been trying to see if I can find Chuck Turner, but it's a fairly common name. Even in the Bronx, there's a few who are around your age. But hopefully, I can.
Okay, wait a second.
Oh yeah.
I can give you the phone number of Chuck Turner because he's my best friend.
Oh my goodness, that's great. I'm glad you kept in touch with him.
Oh yeah, we still talk together, and well, because of the virus, we don't visit each other as often.
Sure.
We would see each other at least 2 or 3 times a year.
Oh wow.
Now, Chuck Turner, his cell phone number, and he's in Manhattan.
Okay, he's in Manhattan now. Okay.
And now he lives. Anyway, look, I'm going to give it to you. His phone number is.
Well, I'm very happy to hear you're in touch with him still, and and I'll look forward to talking with him too. You think he would be willing to talk about the Coops as well?
Oh, I think he would.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll ask him, but this is great because there's definitely been some coverage of the Coops, but it's only focused. I mean, I guess this goes. It's not too surprising. It only focuses primarily on the initial white residents of the Coops, and at least in what I've seen, there's occasional mention that there were black families in the Coops at a pretty early date. But it's a shame that that no one has thought to ask the people who were members of these African American families. But I guess that's not too surprising. But yeah, I'm just very happy to talk to you and look forward to talking to Chuck as well. So
I think that Chuck, he can be very informative. He is very informative. I think that he would give you a lot of information.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're very informative too, Tom. So this is great so far. I have a few more questions for you, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So what are some of the other clubs besides the Carmen Jones Club and the Fife and Drum Corps that you participated in at the Coops? Did you participate in any other kinds of clubs?
No.
Okay, just those two, huh?
Yeah.
And what are I meant to ask you when you mentioned the Carmen Jones Club, but what are some of the activities that you all would do on a week-to-week basis in that club, if you remember?
Oh, let me see. We just get together, and sometimes we'd have parties and dance.
Sure.
Just to get together, that's all.
Yeah, yeah. Was there a dance hall in the basement of the Coops at the time, or?
Yes, all the clubs were in the basement.
All were in the basement. Yeah, I think now it's all been converted just to like, a basement. There's nothing there now, unfortunately. But there was I'm guessing while you lived there, there was a library as well. Is that right? Might have been after. They might have put it together after you moved out. Okay, so now your mother, of course, was highly engaged in political activity throughout her life. Were you engaged in any activities with her when you lived at the Coops, or?
No.
Okay, I see. Was she very active in organizing around the Coops or the Bronx, or did she mostly go down into Harlem for?
Mostly Harlem and Manhattan.
Harlem and Manhattan. That's where she would do most of her activities. Yeah, there were just a few things kind of going around in the Bronx in the especially in the late 40s, but I haven't seen her name associated with any of them, but I have seen Angie Dickerson. So, but Angie was never really too involved in the Harlem organizations, at least not to the extent that your mother was. So, makes sense that Angie would focus on the Bronx. But your mom was probably already very well established, or I know she was well established already in Harlem and Manhattan circles.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure she had plenty to do down there rather than focus around the Bronx. Do you remember her mentioning any issues around the Bronx, like discrimination in employment practices or housing or anything along those lines?
No.
Okay. All right.
I can remember.
Sure. So this is a more general question. What are some of your most vivid memories of your time in the Bronx?
Answer the question again.
What are some of your most vivid memories of your time in the Bronx?
Vivid memories. Oh gosh.
Things that you remember the most, or that are the most pleasant to remember, I guess.
Well, on one side of our building was the playground. And I spent a heck of a lot of time in the playground.
Sure.
And there was Bronx Park on the other side of the building, and we could play baseball there too. And playgrounds, we played basketball. We had a handball court. And I was active in that. I was active in a lot of sports.
Sure.
And I can't remember anything else about.
Did you go to the zoo or the botanical gardens at all when you were there?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the zoo, yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the Bronx Zoo, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Because I was just right a little south of Bronx Park.
Yes.
Technically part of Bronx Park, but but it's not a parkland, of course. But and let's see. Oh, okay. So I meant to ask you more about the two camps that you attended during the summers, Camp Wochica and Camp Unity. Is that right?
Yes, loved them, loved them, loved them. I look forward to going to Camp Wochica. I went there for at least 7 to 8 years, and as a camper, of course.
Sure.
And Camp Unity, I was a teenager. So let me see, I was 20, 21. Yeah. I worked there when I was 20 and 21. And I was a waiter.
I see. Yeah.
Waiter and one. What do you have? No. I have to say no to my son. He was asking me a question.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. Yeah.
But I loved it there. And Paul Robeson came up. Paul Robeson did come up to Camp Unity.
Okay, I see. He sang. Yeah.
And his son Paul, he worked there too.
Oh, wow. Also,
He and his wife. Yeah.
Essie, right?
Pardon me?
Eslanda or Essie, I think she'd go by. Is that right?
Say that again.
Essie?
Essie? Who's? I don't know.
Is that Paul's wife, Eslanda? I think she'd go by Essie.
Oh, I don't know that.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember that. I just don't remember. I just remember Paul Jr. was there.
Yeah.
Paul Robeson lived there, and it was just wonderful. Integrated. Oh my gosh.
So this unlike the Coops to a certain extent, the camps were a little more, I guess, African American and white children.
Oh yes.
Spent a lot of time together, huh? Wow.
Workers' children.
Yeah. Who I guess might not have had the same catch-ups that some of their parents might have had, or something like that. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So did you? I'm guessing you probably made a lot of very close friends at the two camps. Is that right?
Oh yes.
Yeah. And of course, some of them lived in the Coops. Did your friends you already mentioned, Tyke, Al, Chuck, did they go to the camps as well, or?
No.
Okay. So just you and speaking.
I was the one only of my friends.
I see. And I should have asked this earlier. You already mentioned it in our first conversation, but just to get it on record, about how many other African American families lived in the Coops?
I'd say about a dozen.
About a dozen or so.
A good dozen.
Okay, yeah, and so I know that, again, to mention Angie Dickerson, a couple of her brothers, including Tyke's parents, lived in the Coops, but with your mother, it was just her, and her sisters lived elsewhere in the Bronx, you said. Is that right?
Yes, elsewhere in the Bronx, yeah.
Do you remember about where they lived in the Bronx?
I can't remember the address.
Sure. Would you visit them very often?
Oh yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I think so. I know in the '60s anyway. I think they lived off Stebbins Avenue. I don't know if that's where they lived at an earlier date, but it was probably around the 160s or so. I'm guessing, but do you remember anything about visiting them, that part of the Bronx? Would you spend much time in the neighborhood, or you pretty much just went to go visit your aunts?
I just visited them. I didn't spend much time.
Sure. Um, okay, so let's just touch briefly on we've only covered a very short period of your life here, but just to touch briefly on your time after the Coops, what'd you go on to do after the Coops, and about when did you move out?
All right, after the Coops. Well, let me see. I went after the Coops. My gosh. Well, I was drafted in the Army in 1961, and I went to Korea,
Sure.
and I came out of the Army in 1963, and after that, um, I worked at the aircraft factory, and I uh, went to Virginia Union University in Richmond, Virginia,
Okay, yeah.
on the GI Bill, and that's when I met my wife after college, and we married in New York City. After I graduated, of course,
Sure.
we went back, and we lived in the Coops. We had still an apartment in the Coops.
Okay. Oh, so you went back into the Coops after you married, then? Is
Oh
that?
yeah, we always had the apartment.
Oh, okay, okay. I see, I see.
So in 1960, I moved from the Coops to let's see, to Philadelphia.
And you've lived in Philadelphia ever since, huh? Um, and your mother still lived in the Coops for a number of years after you moved out with your wife. Is that right?
Yes, but she moved out of the Coops. I don't remember how long ago, but she lived in Amsterdam Avenue
Mm.
in a retirement home
I see.
because she wasn't too active then.
Yeah.
Not as active then, but she moved to a retirement home, Amsterdam Avenue, and until she passed.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure it got harder and harder for her to go to the very top of yeah, that's the story with all of the walk-up apartments in New York. There gets a certain point where you get too old to do it. Takes a lot out of you. Was there? Do you remember how many bedrooms you all had in the apartment in the Coops? Was it a pretty big apartment or just
No,
one or two
small
bed?
apartment.
Okay, I see.
We had basically one bedroom, living room, kitchen. That's it.
Sure, sure. And I'm guessing to do laundry, you had to bring it to a laundromat. Is that right, or would you?
Yes.
I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I live in a building exactly like that, so not as beautiful as the Coops, but okay. So just to touch a little on a few questions about your mother that I think would be interesting to treat here. What was her experience living in the Coops? Did she enjoy living there, or she just lived there because she was tired of moving after a certain point, or what was her experience with the
both
Coops?
of it. I think she enjoyed being in the Coops at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so nice, and we didn't even have to lock our doors to go into apartments.
Wow.
It was just free. You
Yeah.
didn't have to worry about burglars and stuff like that.
Sure.
And everything was neighborly. And but most of the time she was in Harlem.
Yeah. And again, this is a question your mother has answered in her own words, and you answered already with the last conversation. But again, just to just to touch on it briefly, why, to the best of your knowledge, did your mother end up leaving the Communist Party? I think it was in 1950 or so, if I remember correctly.
Well, she got disillusioned with the Communist Party.
Yeah.
She just told me they were just using her.
Yeah.
That's the way she put it. They were just using her.
For sure.
It was not what she thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was just disappointed.
For sure. For sure. I mean, for a while they were very gung-ho about African American self-determination, but I think they threw that out the window whenever it was convenient for them. So, yeah, I don't blame her. Do you remember if there were other residents of the Coops that agreed with your mom's decision or disagreed with your mom's decision?
No, we didn't discuss that.
Okay, I see. So that's something that people living in the Coops just didn't bring up, or at least that your mom didn't mention to you. Oh, go ahead.
She wasn't all that close to a lot of African Americans. She didn't stay there.
Sure.
I mean, most she did was walk to the train station from the Coops and walk from the train station back to the apartment.
Yeah.
So that was about it.
Okay, well, that gets to the next question I had, which was if your mother had any close friends in the Coops. So pretty much no, huh? Angie Dickerson, yep.
Was a friend.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
Yeah.
Talking about.
Yeah, Angie's daughter Charlotte says she remembers her mother and your mother being friends, but yeah, that's the only time I've heard of someone who was friends with your mom in the building. Now, Angie and her whole family were harassed by the FBI on a pretty regular basis. Did that happen to your mom, or she managed to escape that?
My mother. Yes, she was harassed by the FBI. Especially when she was Ben Davis's campaign manager.
I bet. Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah. Charlotte has a funny story about Angie meeting an FBI agent at the apartment door with a knife, and the FBI, she was cooking dinner. The FBI agent thought she was the servant of the house, so she played along with it and eventually chased him out with the knife. But yeah, so this is the last question I have for you, unless there's other things that occurred to you. But do you remember? So this would be more in the 50s and 60s. The organizations that your mom went on to start or was a prominent part of, like the Universal Association of Ethiopian Women, the Republic of New Africa, those organizations. Do you remember if they had much of a presence in the Bronx, or again it was mostly in Harlem?
A presence in the Bronx.
Sure.
Mostly in Harlem.
And finally, related to that final question, would you go up to Mount Addis Ababa very much once your...
Oh, yes, Addis Ababa, yes.
Yes, okay, Addis Ababa, yeah. So you would go up. I'm guessing there was always plenty of work to be done up there, because there's a pretty large property, is that right?
Oh, yes. Oh, at least about 58.
Yeah, and at least, yeah. And I know your mother wanted to start a college there in honor of your aunt. but I haven't really been able to figure out much what happened. I know there was a fire at some point that burned down a building, but
Yeah.
so
I
that.
thought that was a Klan. It was a Klan.
Okay, I hadn't heard that. I'm not at all surprised because that area is, you know, was and still is kind of crawling with white supremacists.
They didn't want blacks up there. They didn't want blacks.
Oh wow, that's terrible.
The only one.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So after the Klan burned the building down, did your mother try to build anything else, or she kind of?
No, they had a little small building, but my mother and aunt they had two small trailers that they basically lived in.
Okay, I see. And did I guess the family no longer has that that land? Is that right?
Yes, no, we don't.
Okay, no longer have it. Yeah. And let's see if there's anything else here. Yeah, I think that about covers it for now. I mean, there's, always many questions that I'm sure will occur to me after the fact, but I think we've covered a lot of ground right now, and I'm so happy to learn so much about your time in the Bronx. I guess one final thing that occurs to me: after you moved to Philadelphia, did you come up to the Bronx much after that, or no?
Not much, no.
Yeah.
I moved to Philadelphia, no.
Yeah.
The only time I moved up there was to visit my friend Chuck.
Okay, yeah. So he must have lived in the Coops then for a while.
Oh yes, he moved. Yeah, until he moved away.
I see.
He moved away out of the Coops too when he got married and so on.
Sure. I see. Well, and what about Al Percy or Tyke Taylor? Did you keep up much with them, or once you moved away?
No, not much.
Kind of lost touch. Yeah.
We lost touch together. We had a reunion. Oh, I can't remember what year it was, but we had a reunion. And the last time I saw Tyke was at the reunion.
I see.
Al Percy, he moved to the Virgin Islands.
Oh, wow, okay.
He left the Bronx.
Wow.
And everybody else to the Virgin Islands. And Tyke Taylor, he moved out of the Coops, and he moved to another place that lived closer to Orchard Beach.
Okay, yeah.
And when I called them, well, here's the latest thing I could tell you about them.
I see.
Several months ago, I had his telephone number, both of them, the telephone number of Tyke living in the Bronx, blah, blah, blah. And I said, gee, I wonder how he's doing, and so forth. And I said, I'm going to give him a call and surprise him.
Yeah.
I'm going to surprise him behind. So I called him, and his wife answered the phone, and she told me that he had passed.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I was so surprised. I said, what? And he was so strong and vigorous. I mean, this guy was strong. He could crush a can of beer with his hands. I mean, he was a football player.
Wow.
And he was, oh gosh. At any rate, he passed.
Oh.
And then I called Al Percy, and the same thing happened.
Oh, wow.
He answered the phone and said that he had passed also. I said, what?
Wow.
I couldn't believe it.
Wow, so that was pretty recently, huh?
Yeah, about, maybe a year ago.
Okay, I see.
But I don't know how long they had passed.
Yeah, for sure.
I felt like the last of the Mohegans.
Well, I'm glad that Chuck is still alive and kicking.
Yeah, oh yeah, Chuck. Oh, yeah, Chuck, yeah.
But
My best friend.
oh, great. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to giving him a call too, and seeing what he has to say. But
What I would like to
great.
add something because you never asked me about my father.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I had that question on here, but
It's all right. I'll tell you.
yeah, okay, yeah. Let's hear.
Well, my mother, her name her maiden name is Moore.
Sure.
Well, was Moore, and she married my father, and I think she was married to him in Harlem, and his name was Frank Warner.
Frank Warner.
Frank Warner. That's why my name is Warner.
Sure.
And she used her maiden name for political reasons.
Definitely.
Maiden name for political reasons, and she kept that. She kept that name for that reason, for political. And my father was a tailor, and he owned his own shop in Harlem.
Sure.
On Lenox, Lenox Avenue.
On Lenox Avenue,
He had
okay.
a tailor shop, and he was a businessman. And well, of course, he lives with us in the Coops, and that's about all I can tell you. And of course, he's passed.
Sure. So you said he lived with you all in the Coops?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And did he live with you all the whole time in the Coops, or he moved out at one point?
He moved out at one point. There was
Sure. That's yeah. And did you stay?
My mother traveled a hell of a lot.
I'm sure that's very hard on a marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it at the time.
For sure. And did you stay very close with your father after it, or?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you're close with both your parents your whole life. Good, yeah. Great. Well, that was. I'm very glad you thought of that here at the end here. I can't believe I skipped over that question. So.
It's all right. I just think it was an important part that you would know that she was married, and that's why my name is
Sure. I knew she was. For some reason, I had it in my mind that they might have separated before the Bronx. But
they didn't separate before.
Okay, I see.
Or during the Bronx.
During the Bronx, yeah. Okay, that's very important to know here. Great. Well, is there anything else that occurs to you, or anything else you'd like to share?
I can't think of anything else.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you taking all of this time to talk to me. And like I said, I'll send you a transcript as soon as I have it complete here. And yeah, thank you so much. And hopefully talk to you relatively soon here. I'll give Chuck a call, and we'll go from there. I will.
Get in contact with Chuck.
I will. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful afternoon.
You too, and thank you.
Of course, yeah, thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.